So it's interesting when I talk to my wife about how much she sees me playing the game or doing something involved with Go, she seems to think that it's a lot of the time. But what's interesting is that I only get to mainly do Sumego or these situation puzzles during the day, and it's for little spurts of time. I don't get that much time to do anything for more than a really short 5-10 minute period. Sometimes it's between tasks, whether it's at work or at home, taking a break, those kinds of things. But it's funny how the Sumego puzzles become a really great gauge of what my mental sharpness is at a given moment. So if I played in the morning or earlier in the day when I have more energy, there's a better chance that I'm going to be able to read that puzzle more quickly or better or more correctly. And then when I try to do this stuff at night after a full day, I'm sitting up in bed, which is already probably a bad idea because, as we all know, our brains are associating the bed with sleeping and winding down. So if I'm sitting in bed and trying to do this, it's probably not helping me. But I will often just go through the same problem over and over again and just get nowhere. It's incredibly frustrating. But sometimes I will use Sumego or these situation puzzles if I'm thinking about playing a game to see where I'm at. And the reality is I love playing this game or I love learning about this game, but I don't have a whole lot of time. And I'm sure maybe others of you can relate to this. Family and work are really the key things. And after that, when I can find times in between, that's really when I focus on Go. On Thursdays, I will try to play with my college buddy. His name's Adam. He actually knew about the game before I did. And so every Thursday we try to connect at 9 o'clock at night to play. Unfortunately, 90% of the time we text each other and then say, hey, I'm cross-eyed and so tired and I have all this stuff going on and I can't do it. So we end up canceling. But every once in a while, the stars align and we do play. I do the tutoring sessions once a month, which is really great. That's actually a lot of fun for me. I try to prep for those sessions. It is challenging. Sometimes I feel frustrated that I wasn't able to get games in or I wasn't able to get enough Sumego or situation puzzles done for that session. But I also have to step back and say that for me personally, this is all for fun, right? The purpose of this is to enjoy all the different learning concepts and new aspects and challenges of the game. And that's really what I'm looking for at the pace that I can handle with all the other things that are pulling on me from my life. The big thing that I get really sucked into is the improving and the learning. That's really what I want. And so sometimes it's really hard to feel like I can cobble together enough time to focus on something enough to actually learn. Because if I haven't played a game in a while and I start playing again, there's that sort of re-gearing up where I feel like I've taken a couple steps back. It's a little bit frustrating. But again, I have to really take that step back and not get sucked into the whole you're winning or you're losing or what your rank is. That stuff just doesn't matter. But it's amazing how even though it doesn't matter, if I don't consciously remind myself and reorient myself, it does go back to that. Welcome, and this is All Things Go. Next up, we're going to listen to the second half of my conversation with Kim Ouweleen, or Murugandy, where he talks about projects he's taken with the game of Go, along with his thoughts about the future of Go and how it's affected his life personally. You and Peter Brouwer, I'm probably incorrectly pronouncing that, but you created Baduk movies back in, I think it was 2012. And that was largely running, I think, until 2015, that you were creating video tutorials and things like that. How did that come about? I mean, what was that experience like? Where did things sort of leave off?
After I came back from China, this was in 2010, 2011, I first did a series of videos for Go TV. And this was me and Holly Weerheim, the guy from Go TV, creating video tutorials. Go TV, just to explain a little bit about what it is, it used to be a company that went throughout Europe to film all the different tournaments. And these games would be broadcast on KGS and there would be live video recordings of it. And then once I started doing these video tutorials with Eurogo TV, we got a lot of interest on YouTube. And this went on for about a year. And then I was always friends with Peter Brouwer. He's also a Dutch Go player. And yeah, I think he saw these videos and he got also interested in it and interested in teaching together. So he asked me, if I would be interested in maybe making videos with him. And yeah, all started from there. We created a website and we were doing tutorials on Go every week. We made about 250 episodes, if I remember correctly. And yeah, we worked together with lots of different players to create content for the videos, and then we would record them.
I was reviewing some things online about the statistics around Baduk movies. I mean, at one point, I think there was 1,000 views a day. At one point is at least what I saw, which shows, I don't know who wrote that. I don't know if it's credible, but that sounds like not a small number of people that were sort of coming in and appreciating that content. Mm-hmm. Where did things go sort of post 2015?
So we did this for many years. And at some point, it was more about motivation. We put a lot of effort and time into it. And yeah, it's a lot of work to create new videos every week. And especially also to keep coming up with new ideas for videos. So yeah, it was not that we did not have the views or we did not have the interest in our videos perhaps, but yeah, at some point it became too difficult to create new content, And also, it might sound superficial, but we did not really gain any financial benefits from it that much. So we were paying the professional players to create content for us, and we would record and of course we would also get some money for the videos. But yeah, at some point it was just too difficult to keep going with it, and we put it on hold, and we wanted to come back to it, but that never really happened. But then it evolved into a book. So actually now we're writing a book series, which is based around some of the material in the videos of Baduk movies.
And I just to interject, first of all, that is not superficial at all. That's incredibly generous. One, any of the actual financial remuneration that you get actually being given to the Go professionals or strong Go amateurs that are doing the videos. So I could certainly understand, the amount of time and effort, right? If you put into those things, how long can we keep doing this, right? And are we actually able to have that be a meaningful part of our living? So I certainly understand that. That's a great transition into your weird and wonderful book series, which is really cool. I have to say, in the Smart Go app and that area, your graphic design skills certainly popped out, because seeing that book covers matter. They make a big difference. And so your eye is really drawn to it. So you published that. Yeah, you published that back in 2022, if I understand that correctly. Give us a little overview. How did that connect from Baduk movies, and what is that book about?
The first volume came out in 2022, indeed, and it's called Weird and Wonderful: Extraordinary Moves by Professional Go Players. It's kind of a compilation of just crazy moves that have occurred in professional matches. For Baduk movies, for example, we did some videos called The Best Tessuji's of All Time. So we had like a top 10, and we would make the video in a kind of bombastic style. When you, for example, watch NBA basketball, they have these summaries of the top 10 from last week. And we did the same for that video. So yeah, some of those moves are just extraordinary. And we wanted to write more in depth about them. So just to give you a little idea of the kind of moves, Go players all know what a ladder breaker is, but probably not many Go players know that there is double ladder breakers.
Tell us a little more about what a double ladder breaker is.
Yeah, so it's a very rare type of move that breaks two ladders at the same time. In some cases, the opponent can set up two ladders, which makes their own group safe, because they can either capture one group of stones of the opponent in a ladder to make themselves safe, or the other. But then there are situations in which you can break those two ladders simultaneously with one move. And that's what's called a chin shinto in Japanese, or a double ladder breaker. And for example, in Weird and Wonderful Volume 1, we have a chapter on 3 double ladder breakers from the history of Go. One which was played by Chochi-kun, which is also the person that's on the cover of the book that you mentioned. And it's just remarkable. These moves, you really need a stroke of genius to come up with something like this, because these moves are so extremely unusual and rare. If you have never seen it before, I think it's just impossible to conjure it up at the spot.
Incredible. The concept that one can have the reading ability and also the creativity
Right.
think of these kinds of moves is incredibly fascinating. So that certainly comes through in the book, and I look forward to delving into it further. What do you think the future books might look like?
Yeah, so we're currently working on volume 2, which will be also a book on unusual moves, but particularly techniques and Josuke related shapes. So something in the line of trick moves, but not trick moves per se. So moves that in specific corner patterns might surprise your opponent. And in the book, we look at what the AI thinks about these moves, and we also debunk some of the traditional ways of thinking about specific techniques. For example, there's a technique to escape when the opponent caps your stones. This technique looks extremely fancy and it has been around for centuries, but the computer just simply says it's incorrect. It's fancy, but it's not necessary. There's a much simpler way. So that's one part of the book. But there's a lot of different interesting techniques that are very specific. And we talk about those.
Very interesting. And we'll try to provide a link to Smart Go and Go books so that people can access that. So thank you for that overview. One other project I wanted to touch on before we move on to past and present, how you think about Go and how it's affected your life, which I'm sure it has in many ways. Tell us
Definitely.
a little bit about the 2016 European Go yearbook, which is what the interview you did that I was able to review in 2017. That was a lot of the conversation. So my main reaction was, my goodness, the level of work and detail and revision. Just give us a high level understanding of the most challenging aspects and maybe some takeaways, how it's shaped you going forward with projects, things like that.
Yeah, my God, that was a dragon of a project. It was really incredible. It was a book that spanned almost 600 pages in the end, and it wasn't really supposed to. It wasn't. I wasn't setting out to create that many pages, but the European Go Federation asked me to create a yearbook about the year 2016 in European Go. So what I wanted to do in the book is to basically give an overview of all the different countries in Europe and their activity when it comes to Go in that specific year. It was also the year of AlphaGo, so I also created a chapter on that. But just the sheer work of getting the information from all the different countries and all the different organizations. It was not an easy task, I can tell you.
Some of these countries, you were trying to find a phone number, an email address, you'd email them and hear nothing, right, from anybody. Then you'd sort of just start calling around perhaps and asking for any information you could. Am I remembering correctly? Was there a story about Azerbaijan or Kazakhstan? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, Azerbaijan, indeed.
Okay.
Yeah.
What happened there?
For some of these countries, it was very difficult to find information. First of all, I sent out emails to all the national organizations that are linked up to the European Go Federation. And for some of the bigger countries, let's say in the Go scene, like France, Germany, Russia, it was pretty easy to get information and they responded quickly. But for some of the more obscure, so to speak, countries, when it comes to Go, such as Azerbaijan, it was quite challenging to gain information. So what I would do sometimes is look on the internet at the PandaNet European Go Team Championship website. This is a team competition for different countries throughout Europe that get to play in teams against each other. And there I could sometimes find more information or names of players. And then I would try to find these people online, for example, on Facebook. Facebook really helped me, actually. It really helped me that I know a lot of Go players already from the different countries. And they sometimes had some, contact details. Oh, this guy, I met him at the World Championships back in 2014. I think I have his email. And so I would try to get any possible information so that I could reach out to these people. And for Azerbaijan, I ended up finding someone on Facebook. And then, this was actually not the champion of the country, but he would provide me with the contact details of that person. And turned out that, this guy, Bahadur Tahirbayov, did not speak any English. He only spoke Russian and Azerbaijani. So I somehow communicated with him on the internet through Google Translate, and a very obscure website that translates Azerbaijani to English, which barely worked, but it did help. And I did an interview with him. It was actually a really nice interview in the end.
It makes you think as you're going through this many month process to find these people, interview them, talk to them for the yearbook. It does beg the question, particularly with me being in the United States, it's like how many people are there, right? How popular is it in some of these countries? I'm less familiar with Europe, but as you just mentioned, Kim, in some of the more popular countries, France, Germany, Russia, it was easy. So
Yes.
Did you get a sense in this process of, okay, there's really only a handful, if any, in some of these countries? I guess you also knew, though, at the very least from the PandaNet games, the group team competitions, you knew there were some folks there. I mean, is there anything you would add to that?
Yeah, sure. It was quite interesting to find out about certain countries. For example, Luxembourg. I figured that, Luxembourg would probably have a decent Go scene. It's close to Belgium. It's close to the Netherlands. It's close to Germany. 3 countries that have a pretty big Go scene. But I couldn't find almost any information about Luxembourgian players. I knew there were some, and even very strong players. There's a 6 Dan from Luxembourg. There's a 4 Dan. I think I even met one of them before. But they told me that basically in 2016, nothing happened in Luxembourg. So I ended up not including any information about Luxembourg in the book because simply nothing had happened in terms of Go. There was also the country of Bulgaria. There was one very strong player, up-and-coming guy, Sinan Djepov, who was going to a lot of European top tournaments, and he was performing very well and getting stronger very fast. But nothing else seemed to be going on in Bulgaria. I talked to him and he told me that basically he was the only one that was really active at that point. So I ended up doing an interview with him, which was also a really cool interview. He showed me some of his games with the Sanrense opening, which was his favorite opening at the time. Yeah, and there was also the country of Macedonia, which was not included in the list of European countries on the website of the EGF. So the EGF had no idea that there was any Go activity in Macedonia. But I accidentally stumbled upon some information on Facebook as well, that there was actually something going on in Macedonia. So there were some really nice photos of the Ohrid Lake with a beautiful Go pond in front of it. And it turned out that there was a guy, Filip Pascali, who actually set up the first Go club in the country that year. Mm-hmm. So I managed to track him down, and we also did an interview together. And after the book was published, the EGF also included Macedonia on the list on the website. So that was also really cool.
Maybe a few more wrapping up questions about Go in your life personally, how it's been a part of your life personally, professionally, in your artwork and those sorts of things. If you think about how much you've been involved in Go over time, right? From doing these projects, doing videos, writing articles, interviews, tournaments, all of those sorts of things. Speak to us a little bit about how that's changed over time, where you find yourself in this sort of moment in terms of Go in your life and how that might change.
Sure. Yeah, so if I think back about, discovering the game at my parents' place and where I am now, it's so strange how such a small thing can have such a big impact on your life, right? Because, it's just a game, but it changed my whole life. I had jobs because of Go. I did, I wrote books. My relationship is thanks to Go. I've been together with Justina, my girlfriend, for over 10 years now. And she's also a Go player. She's a 1Q, actually. It's just, it's bizarre if you think about it that way. But it all grew organically, It's not like I thought, I'm going to make this game into my life's work or something like that. I just got hooked by it and it all happened.
Going forward, you have this book series that you're focusing on. I'm really excited to see that next book come out. You're obviously doing teaching as well. If you go back to that sort of high level, kind of where Go is in this sort of moment in the world in 2024, what's your sense on, do you have any sense on, okay, Go is at a certain level of popularity in Europe, in Asia. I don't know if you can speak to the US at all with anybody that you've interacted with, but my sense is that Asia is really seen as sort of the top level by a long shot because of its long history, right, in terms of quality of play, level of play. And there's also very, not unattractive prize money for the very, very top players, right? Bringing in $50,000 US prize money or whatever it might be. And then European players, I know that even just the European Go Federation ranking, right? If you Kim, are a 4-dan, my understanding from people that know much more about this than I say that that's much stronger or likely stronger than a 4-dan in the American Go Association. Can you speak to what you've seen happen in the recent years? Have you seen shifts in that or any improvements in terms of, I don't know, American Go players, European Go players, Asian Go players? What have you seen there?
The European Go Federation actually implemented a professional system. I think it's already about 10 years ago that they started with this. So from that moment on, there were competitions to become a professional Go player in Europe. And I know that the American Go Association has also implemented a similar system that created some American professional players. I think this is a very good development. And from your Europeans' point of view, I can say that the level has definitely increased. Some of these top players that became a professional or that are very close to becoming professional players in Europe have traveled more to Asia and actually have had some really good results against Asian professional players. They even beat some top names. And so this in itself is a very good development, but it's a small thing. I think if Go wants to progress in the Western world, we need more sponsorship. We need to make it interesting for sponsors to back us, basically. And I think it's very, very doable. I mean, chess is also backed by big companies, and Go is a game very similar to chess in terms of strategy and mind sport. So I don't see a reason why this could not happen. It's just a thing about popularity. We need to put Go in the spotlight, and it takes a lot of energy and a lot of dedication to do that, but it's possible. And I think we're on the right track. It just needs more dedication from more different people and the right person to come along.
It seems like the advent of the AlphaGo documentary, which I know personally that really lit a fire, to my interest to get into it. It seems like you need those moments, and it seems like media is an incredibly powerful tool, like what you did with Baduk movies, and your other colleagues that did that with you, and Hikaru No Go, which is the very popular anime on it. It's like you need these things to really create that interest on a broad scale. And it's fascinating because I see your point, right? It's not dissimilar to chess. There's a lot of similarities, and sure, there's also a lot of differences. But if one is fairly ubiquitous, everybody knows chess, right? If I ask my brother or I ask my wife, they'll say, "Oh yeah, I know chess," and many of them may even know some of the moves, right? How it works. But at the same time, it may not mean that it is popular, so to speak. But I'm sure that, again, documentaries about Magnus Carlsen, right? The best chess player in the world, and those sorts of things, I think they help and they make a difference. So,
for sure.
Kim, first of all, thank you so much for being generous with your time. This has been a very enlightening experience. I've loved learning about all these different things from you, and be well.
Yeah. Thanks, Travis. Thanks for having me.
Next up, we're going to talk with Nathan Harwit, my Go teacher and also a 6-dan amateur player. And we're going to discuss the anime Hikaru No Go and an interview that I did on Go Magic with Nathan some time ago. So take a listen. All right, Nathan, would you call it one of your favorite shows, Go related, TV, movie?
Yeah, for sure. So there's kind of another one that my twin and I enjoyed a lot. He also plays Go. It was a Chinese one, but Hikaru No Go was definitely our favorite. We were actually, when we were younger, we would read it under the bed covers or play Go. So parents kind of got us for that.
All right. So scene 1, it's in the beginning of the show. And this is when we're learning the backstory of the spirit, right? Fujiwara no Sai. And so he says that he was playing a game in front of the shogun or whatever, and he loses because Sai's opponent cheated, and what he did was he placed a stone of Sai's color into his own pile of prisoners. And I imagine at that level, like one stone is 1 point makes the world of difference. So in that situation, you were saying that you haven't really seen this happen. I mean, you've done a lot of tournaments in the US?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, I've ran a couple by myself or just as a TD with somebody else also helping me. I've also played at Go Congress a lot. So yeah.
And you pretty much said, hey, I haven't seen this happen in live games in the US, but who knows? So we did this a little while ago. And then the follow-up question in the interview that we asked was this sort of temptation to cheat as AI has gotten bigger and bigger. Any sense on that changing at all in the last year or so? Has it gotten worse? Has it gotten better? For example, I hear a lot in the chess world, and I've seen this on the Reddit Baduk forum, that chess, there seems to be quite a bit of accusations of people cheating and on the pro level, and started with the whole world number one Magnus Carlsen with another player, so on. Have you seen that? I know you don't follow the pro level incredibly closely, but any sense for how that's changed?
Basically, there's I don't know if you've heard of the Redmond Cup, but it's a pretty, there's like I think it's under 12 and over 12. There's two groups. One of the bigger tournaments in the US.
Okay.
And generally the winner gets a free trip to Go Congress. So it's fairly competitive. And I heard from the people running the tournament that everyone within the top like 4 all were cheating. And we confirmed it. So it's just kind of like, what do we even do at this point? And so definitely with AI, it's gotten a lot worse. There was one very famous Chinese player that got accused of cheating, 9dom Pro. I think he's top 3 or 5 in China right now. And this one really, really strong player, definitely top 10 in China, was just like, look, I think this guy's cheating. And he got a lot of backlash for accusing him. And he still said the guy was cheating. But he was accusing him of cheating in person too.
Wow.
So that's pretty interesting, where it's like you have cameras, people are all watching, and you get this very strong top level pro accusing another top level pro of cheating in a live game. And a lot of people have accused this person of cheating. So it's kind of interesting. Generally, you wouldn't assume this would happen unless something was going on. You don't just have a bunch of different people accusing the same person.
Any sense how they might have been cheating, Nathan?
They were saying that he was probably cheating when he goes to the bathroom. So there's probably less kind of surveillance or whatever. There's some sort of chance he has some device somewhere that's hidden on him, where he goes to the bathroom and he checks something. I don't know how else you would do it unless you were like had somebody else that was like helping you and they would like signal certain things about certain moves, but that seems a little bit over the top. I don't see how you could cheat that easily live, but I don't know.
Interesting. There was some commentary on the Reddit forum that was talking about how it might be done in chess, and that's something about a device that vibrates put in a certain part of your body that is then connected back to somebody that has it hooked up to Katago or whatever it is, and that there's some sort of like almost like a Morse code of vibration. I don't know how you would do that with a 19 by 19 grid versus chess, which is a
8 by 8, yeah.
Right, a significantly smaller board, but I imagine it's possible. I mean, if I just simply think about how the Japanese style of saying what move on the board, right? 15-1, 15-2, I suppose it's possible. You would be counting a lot, but again, that seems it seems far-fetched, but who knows, right? If there's serious money at stake, like you said with the Redmond Cup, imagine going to the US Go Congress. I mean, that's probably a few $1,000 at least, right?
Yeah.
To be able to do that. Okay. All right. So that's really interesting, even at that level. And we're not even talking about pros in really the top countries, right? Like in Asia, China, Japan, Korea. I mean, you're winning the In Cup, isn't it like $300,000, $400,000, I think, top prize?
It's even more in those countries because the US dollar is so strong. When you convert it, it's worth 400,000. So it's just a ton of money to those people. Yeah, it's just a lot of money.
Interesting. Yeah. Next scenario, we're at scene 2 here. So we're talking about Akira Toya, right? The second main character behind Hikaru. He's trying to track down Hikaru and he finds him at, I think it's Haze Middle School. I may be wrong there. And he's trying to stick with him because he got blown away by him in the first game and was shocked that he was a complete newbie. And he's saying something's strange here, so I got to follow him. And then he gets kind of bullied into playing these simultaneous games blind against a few of these schoolboys that are just being kind of idiots. And trying to egg him on and annoy him. And so there's this scene, he's in the library or somewhere, they're sitting down, those schoolboys are sitting down, they're trying to play these games against him, and Akira's crouched over, staring into a bookshelf, trying to imagine and play the moves for each of these. So back when we were talking, you said, oh gosh, there was a player that you said maybe 5 to 10 years ago at the Go Congress was doing blindfolded games simultaneously. And you said he was actually pretty decent at it, like maybe only a little bit weaker. That's really interesting. Have you seen anything like that since? I mean, have you gone to other Go Congresses since?
No, so I kind of stopped going about 5 or 10 years ago. A lot of our friends stopped going, so that's the main reason. But basically, this guy, I think he's played maybe 2 games at once. I think it's 7 or 8 Dawn AGA roughly. And his play was not much worse than if he was playing without being blindfolded, as far as I could tell. So it was pretty interesting.
Why is it so much harder, you think, than in chess? Is it the sheer size and complexity and variations of number of moves you can play?
Generally, I mean, the board is 19 by 19. You play on the intersections. Chess is 8 by 8. You play in the squares. So just a lot more variations. I think in general in chess, it's a lot of different possibilities, but you only go maybe 3 to 5 moves deep. So it's like less reading, but kind of judgment. Whereas in Go, a lot of it, especially in like complex fights, is just brute force reading out these really deep branches and counting liberties. And so it's just much harder.
Does that tie it all back? I know you were originally a chess player, right? Before you got into Go. Does that tie back into any particular differences in strengths? I mean, there's a lot more of tactical play in chess versus in Go, or?
Yeah, I would say I've taught a lot of Go players that either currently play chess or have played chess, and the skills generally translate over. But in chess, there's a lot of visualization, but just not as big of a space. So sometimes the skills transfer over. A lot of the times they do. But there's just a lot more brute force reading in Go than in chess, I would say.
Got it. Scene 3. So this is where Hikaru is finally a professional Go player. They go through all the episodes of him playing every round of the Insei games where he's doing the round robin matches, and he finally becomes a pro. And so he plays this hotshot up and coming professional player, and they start playing one color Go. And the pro he's playing against starts to break out into a cold sweat and freak out because he's not keeping track anymore. What do you remember? Have you ever seen this happening? Do you think it's possible to do? Is this just something Hikaru No Go made up?
If somebody can play blindfolded, I don't see any problem with playing one color Go. I mean, you could argue it's a little more confusing if everything looks black and you like blink or look away, you just forget where things are. But otherwise, you just have to be concentrating really hard. I can't do much. I can play like a full 9x9 game with one color Go.
Oh, interesting.
But I've tried on like a full board, and the instant you lose your concentration, you look away, or you just like forget what the shape was in one spot, and then you get scared and you look at the whole thing, it's just a clump of like black or white stones, then it's just kind of tricky.
It's over.
So
that sounds...
You're just like, you don't know what's going on. So
that sounds incredibly impossible at my level, but perhaps at your level, if you really don't have any break in concentration, you can do that. Have you ever actually gone out and done that as something for fun with other players, or not really?
So sometimes my twin and I will just mess around and we'll just play like 9x9, just one color, and it generally works okay. We've tried, I guess, on 19x19, but at one point it just goes, somebody just takes a stone off and goes, I captured you. Another person says that's not captured, and then it just kind of ends there.
Okay. Now, I know on the Go Magic website, they've done this interesting thing in their Sumego where they have a mode, and I apologize, I'm forgetting the name of the mode, but they have this mode where you can play through the moves and it won't put the stones on the board, but it'll tell you whether it's right or not. And I think it's trying to represent either the one color Go or, I guess, playing blindfolded to a degree. Which is pretty cool because, I mean, I hope you would feel as a teacher of Go, that's something, right? The whole etiquette of Sumego, right? With not just blindly putting down moves, and if it says it's wrong, trying it again because now you've wasted it. That whole process. So hopefully that sounds like a really nice development. I've never seen that anywhere else. Have you?
No, I have not actually. I have never even heard of that, but that's just a great way to practice reading if it doesn't actually put the stones down or it's all the same color or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a cool feature. I've not gotten to use it yet, but hopefully I will soon. Scene 4. This is where Akira Toya, he's been a professional now. I think he's a 2 dan or a 3 dan, but there is some sort of event where like the local dignitaries or politicians are playing some sort of game and the other pro has had to bail. And so he takes the place of that pro and he plays against 4 players and then goes into actually tying all of them in a simultaneous set of games. Would that be really, really hard to do?
Yeah, so not only do you have to actually tie the game, but you have to make it not very obvious. I guess it depends on the opponent, but you'd have to if you're like winning by like, let's say 10 points at one point, which hopefully you wouldn't be if you're trying to tie, you'd have to somehow throw the game back to even without making it really obvious. There's a lot of planning there. And then also you have to predict what your opponent's going to do so they don't just like resign or something or completely blunder and die somewhere. So it's very tricky.
Right. So there's actually a bit that's out of your control because let's take this example. You're playing politicians or dignitaries, people where if you make it look very obvious that you're doing something, they could get really pissed, which in the show, it goes through how they almost get really upset, the head politician, but then the head politician is really just impressed from what Akira Toya was able to do. So here you're saying, okay, you would have to really dial it back if you're ahead by too much at a point, right? And then there could be other situations where they just don't see life and death situation or they completely blunder. Okay. Scene 5, this is where they're playing at that Hase middle school still. Hikaru meets the player named Yuki. He's the one that goes and gambles in the Go salons. And he does these moves where he's sliding around when they count up points at the end of the game. He's sliding pieces to move the boundaries between black and white to try to get an edge. And then there's an awesome scene where he pretty much gets caught red-handed. And so they bring in like a ringer to pretty much stuff it back into his face and have him lose a lot of money. Any new thoughts on this? You said in the interview, you're like, hey, this is possible, though you only really have seen it maybe with younger kids. What do the kids do? I mean, what will you find on this moving? Is it intentional or are they doing it thinking it's okay?
Yeah, I mean, with little kids, especially when they're just learning, they'll just accidentally slide something. They're not trying to cheat.
Oh, I got you.
So I haven't really seen anyone deliberately try to slide borders when they know what they're doing and not get caught. I mean, at a certain level, probably mid-dawn level or higher, both players, in theory, if it's a pretty serious game, already know what the score is before you count. And so a lot of the time, a player just resigns, or it's like very clear. It just kind of, they don't want to say they resign or anything. They just kind of count it out. But yeah, if you're supposed to win by 3 points, all of a sudden you lose by 1 or 2. If you're like mid to high dawn level, that you just know something's off because there's just no way.
Got it. Scene 6 was really cool because it's when Hikaru plays his first pro game against Toya Meijin, right? The father figure of Akira Toya, who's ostensibly in the show the best player kind of at that moment outside of, I guess, Fujiwara Nosai or however you might think of that. But they use reverse komi and they use that as a handicap. Is this common practice? What do you think of the use of reverse komi? Because I know in the interview with Alexander Dinerstein, he does talk about the use of reverse komi and talking about how it does change sort of the flow of the game or sort of the focus of the game. And he has that personal preference of doing a sort of like 3-stone handicap he calls it Chinese handicap. I don't know if you've heard of this. It's like you start with a certain board setup and there's one corner to trick your opponent with Joseki. And then there's 3 black stones that are not necessarily placed at the star points. You can kind of put the stones anywhere you want. Tell us a little bit more about just the effects of reverse komi.
Yeah, I would say as long as the reverse komi isn't large enough, generally it's roughly the same, but it's pretty nice because then It's like a real game. It's just the komi's a little different. But it's like if you're doing like a reverse 50 komi or something, even though about a 4 stone handicap's about a 48-point head start, so it's about 50 points, it's significantly harder to win at reverse 50 komi than to win at 4 stones, because it's almost like you gave your opponent 50 prisoners to start. It's just 50 free points versus you actually have to make the points with your handicap stones. So equivalently, they're the same, but it's significantly more advantageous towards the person getting the reverse komi, because they just it's like cash. They just start out with that territory.
Right. So in effect, it's locked in. You have it. It's not changing. Yes. Whereas you got the stones on the board, you may get it, you may not. It's effectively influenced, but it's not yet banked territory. That makes a lot of sense. It seems like some people might say, hey, if you become too aware of that reverse komi as the player that has the reverse komi, you could start to really play defensively and just try to save in very small amounts of territory and still get ahead. I would imagine that's defeating the purpose, correct?
Yeah, I mean, you can play however you want generally. if you're giving a handicap, a lot of people assume that you can just play very safe, but even at like 8-9 stone handicap, if you play really safe, your opponent doesn't actually have to kill you anywhere to win. I mean, if you waste enough moves and you're just very inefficient, you can easily lose games, even if you don't die anywhere at all, even at a 9-stone handicap.
But so, like, for example, when you and I play, right, because you're teaching me, we might play with a 25 to 30 point reverse komi setup. When we do that, your hope is that I am going to play normally, right? I'm going to play as though there theoretically isn't a handicap, because that's going to show different strengths or weaknesses in my game versus if I have handicap stones on the board.
Generally, the hope is that when you give handicap, that the person taking the handicap plays the same. So it's like good practice. But I mean, you do learn different skills of like how to defend properly, how to not get over concentrated in certain things, even if you're trying to just play really safe and just trying to win. So generally, though, it's probably best if you play roughly the same and you kind of disregard most of that reverse handicap or reverse komi. But I mean, it also helps if you're like, hey, I need to win by, or I need to not lose this many points, and you're doing a lot of counting and like judging certain things to be like, can I take less risk and still win here? So you learn different skills if you play a different way.
Got it. Scene 8, Akira is playing some punk kid at Hase Middle School, and the kid says to himself, hey, I'm just going to copycat this guy and I'm going to make out really well. And then it starts to go, it eventually stops being copycatted. It looks like all the star points are played. And then in the middle, some attaching starts to happen when Akira realizes, after a while of Akira realizing he's being copycatted. Have you ever experienced this? Have people played this against you?
Not recently, at least, but I'm sure it's happened. I don't remember it happening in any sort of tournament game or anything. It was just probably some casual thing. They were just trying to be annoying or test out a strategy. I don't know if it's on Fox for sure. I don't think it was a tournament game, but I remember somewhat recently, maybe last year or two, these top level pros were playing, and it was clear one of them was mirroring the other one, which I found kind of odd, but it was just kind of strange because they're both very strong. So it's like, okay, there's some weird strategy going on here.
Is that a psychological game? Do you think that's maybe?
Yeah, it's kind of like, all right, we don't have much of an edge anyways. I'm just going to mess. Well, a lot of it is like messing up the opponent's prep. Happens in chess too, but it's
okay.
You spend a week or 2 or 3 preparing a certain sequence at the opening.
Okay.
You're not going to expect the opponent just copy you because then you're off prep. So
right.
A lot of it's psychological at that point.
Got it. Nathan, this was fun. I really appreciate the time.
Yeah, no problem. It was really fun, Travis.
That's all the time that we have for today. But the question that I want to leave you with is, what are the unexpected ways that Go has shaped your life? Thanks so much, and I'll catch you next time.